Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar discussing the effects of marijuana legalization on the workplace.
Today's speaker is David Kotler, a Florida lawyer and former Miami-Dade County prosecutor with broad legal experience during his 20 years of practice.
If you could, what components of medical and recreational legalization should be of particular interest to our employers?
I think the two aspects that jump out at me are really that there's no obligations as we sit here today under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, to offer reasonable accommodations to use marijuana in the workplace. And similarly, again, while I think there has been some shift, still in most states, employers can terminate employees for utilizing marijuana or for failing drug tests. And except perhaps in Rhode Island and maybe even a most recent decision, which I'll discuss later.
How have opinions about cannabis changed during the past decade?
Well, Karen, despite its treatment at the federal level, the medical community and perhaps hand in hand, the general populace seem to be more accepting of the use of cannabis within the past 10 years as we look back. Numbers from the General Social Survey, a large nationwide survey conducted every 2 years and widely considered by most to represent the gold standard for public opinion research, comport with other national surveys last year, which found support ranging from about the upper 50s to lower 60 percentile of the population.
And are there certain groups that are more accepting of marijuana than others?
I think so, Leon, and that there seems to be significant differences between those who approve of marijuana and those who don't condone its use. The General Social Survey indicated that two significant fault lines when it comes to marijuana policy existed, and those are age and political party. Fully 2/3 of the respondents aged 18 to 34 supported legalization in the survey, as well as a majority of those ages 35 to 49 and 50 to 64. However, seniors 65 and older stood apart, with only 42% supporting legalization. Attitudes regarding legalization seem to have shifted pretty rapidly. In 2008, for instance, I think it was about only 40% of the youngest respondents and just over 21% of seniors supported marijuana legalization. A total of 8 states now allow for the use of recreational marijuana. And these include Alaska, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington State.
And which states allow medical marijuana?
As you can see, 29 states and the District of Columbia allow for some type of medical use of marijuana. So each state has a slightly different list of qualifying conditions for medical marijuana use, but most allow it for the use of folks with cancer, human immunodeficiency virus, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, epilepsy, and seizures, or folks that are able to acquire cards or licenses in some places to grow or purchase cannabis for medical use in these states.
And which states allow for the use of CBD marijuana with little to no THC?
So those are really 14 states that allow kind of what we call low THC, high CBD strain for use by patients. And those states, and some of them actually allow what we call industrial hemp, maybe a topic for another day. And certainly each of those states has different requirements regarding the allowable levels of what the THC and CBD might be in that which is allowed in that state. The new rule does not prohibit drug testing of employees following a workplace incident, but it does attempt to correct procedures for reporting work-related injuries and illnesses that may deter or discourage employees from reporting. So the rule prohibits employers from using drug testing, where the threat of drug testing is a form of retaliation against employees who report injuries or illnesses. If an employer conducts drug testing to comply with the requirements of a state or federal law or regulation, the employer's motive would not be retaliatory, and this rule wouldn't prohibit such testing. Therefore, an employer kind of has to look at each and every work accident on a case-by-case basis before automatically testing. And it's important to train those that are responsible with these kind of situations, what are permissible for drug tests.
What is a good example of a situation that permits drug testing?
It's a good question. I think an example that's often given is when you have an employee who's driving, let's say, a forklift and strikes another employee, causing both employees injury. Under the new rules, only the forklift driver could be drug tested, while the other employee could not. The employee who was hurt but not driving arguably had no culpability in the accident, and a positive drug test, wouldn't have any impact on why the incident occurred. If the struck employee were to be tested, then that action could be considered retaliatory. Clearly, the driver of the forklift could be tested for drugs or alcohol, since the cause of the accident could have been a result of impairment due to the use of drugs and or alcohol.
Do you have any specific recommendations for employers?
I do. Look, first of all, I think probably the safest thing for employers to do for the time being is maintain zero tolerance drug policy until we really review state level policies. And the policy should articulate zero tolerance for use of drugs and abuse of alcohol or other illegal behavior. The policy may also allow for discharge or discipline of an employee or refusal to hire an applicant if an employee or applicant refuses to submit to a drug test. Now, again, it's got to be state specific, as we see how that's kind of shaping up in really recent cases. But make sure to require employees to acknowledge the drug policy you have in writing. Documentation, as a litigator, I've really come to learn this, that documentation is always critical if taking an adverse employment action. You should also ensure your HR departments or whoever has a similar role is aware of what steps should be taken to document violations of company policies, and if necessary, and maybe advisable, utilize progressive discipline.
For additional information on personnel concepts on human resources related topics, select the video on the screen. Subscribe now for HR and labor law updates.